Do you know where your mind goes when you're not watching? Because even when you don't realize it, it's still creating. The greatest illusion is believing that when we get distracted, when we switch off for a moment, life also pauses. But it doesn't. The universe never stops responding. Creation doesn't shut down. Even when you're not present, something within you keeps sending out signals, vibrations, frequencies, and the most striking part, those frequencies are not neutral. They're shaped by memories, fears, unconscious patterns, as if a silent part of you were in charge of your reality, without your conscious permission. Right now, as you hear my voice, your mind might try to drift away. It may wander to what happened yesterday or to what might happen tomorrow. That's automatic, but it's in that subtle, almost invisible motion that creation takes place. What you observe or fail to observe holds power. Today, we're going to explore one of the most hidden aspects of the mind. What happens when you're not in control, when conscious observation fades and autopilot takes over? Are you truly present, or are you being led without even noticing? What happens when you're not consciously observing? Have you ever noticed what happens when your attention slips away? When you're washing the dishes and suddenly find yourself replaying an old conversation? Or when you're driving and realize you can't remember the last 5 minutes of the road? It may seem harmless, but those moments reveal something much deeper about how your reality is shaped. When you're not consciously observing, your mind doesn't pause. It repeats. It's as if there's an automatic mechanism ready to take over whenever your presence steps aside. And this mechanism isn't neutral. It's conditioned. It runs on everything that's been recorded throughout your life. Experiences, traumas, inherited beliefs, quiet fears, ideas about who you are and what's possible for you. In the absence of your presence, the past takes command. And the past is a lens that distorts the present, filtering everything through what once was. Your vibration in that moment isn't being chosen, it's being recycled. When the mind isn't guided, it returns to the familiar. And for most people, the familiar is soaked in limitation. Scarcity, anxiety, guilt, fear, all these vibrational states rise back to the surface without you even noticing. Imagine you're a broadcasting station. At every moment, you're transmitting a signal to the universe. That signal is made up of the quality of your attention, the emotions you carry, the stories you mentally reinforce. So if you're not observing, what's being transmitted? The same old story, the same energy, the same unconscious impulses that keep attracting similar experiences. Confirming a reality you'd often rather change. The absence of your presence isn't silence, it's repetition. And it's at this exact point that most people get lost. They believe that by doing nothing, by switching off a little, they're simply resting their minds. But the quantum field doesn't interpret your rest as a pause. It interprets what you vibrate. And if your vibration is being led by involuntary thoughts, old emotions, and automatic reactions, the field responds to that. You may not be paying attention to what you are thinking, but the universe is. When there's no conscious observation, the mind connects to what's familiar, even if that familiar place hurts. Why? Because familiarity feels safe to the ego. It doesn't matter if it's negative or self-sabotaging. If it's known, the ego feels at home. That's why when you're not observing, you're not in a neutral state, you're actually surrendering to programmed chaos. A chaos that looks like normal life on the surface, but in practice keeps projecting the same circumstances, the same behavior patterns, the same outcomes. And then life starts to feel predictable. Nothing changes. Everything repeats. Not because you're not trying to change, but because while your intention seeks transformation, your unconscious observation keeps feeding the old. It's like planting flowers and still watering the weeds. The creation of your reality doesn't just follow what you want consciously, it follows what you observe, and that includes what you observe without realizing it. So the question is, how many hours of your day are you truly present? How many decisions do you make with real intention? And how many are just automatic reactions, driven by a program you don't even remember agreeing to? The good news is this can all be reprogrammed, But the first step is to recognize every time you're not observing, something else is creating for you. And that something is rarely what you'd consciously choose if you were awake. The subconscious takes control of observation. You may not be paying attention, but something inside you is, all the time. Even in moments when your conscious mind is distracted, scattered, or tired, there's a part of you that keeps watching, interpreting, reacting. That part is your subconscious, a silent, invisible, tireless guardian. It's always present, yet works behind the scenes, like a hidden programmer issuing commands to your internal system without needing your current permission. The subconscious doesn't sleep. It's constantly recording, filtering, categorizing, and emitting vibration. And here's the most curious thing. It doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined, or between what's helpful and what's harmful. It simply repeats patterns. It observes everything, but acts based on what it already knows, on the experiences you've lived, the traumas you haven't integrated, the words you heard so often throughout your life that they somehow became truth within you. Picture your subconscious as a loyal sentry, but one who only knows how to follow old maps. While you're absent from conscious observation, it keeps operating according to those outdated maps, even if they lead to places you no longer wish to go. It believes it's protecting you. After all, its job is to keep you safe. And to it, safety means familiarity. This invisible guardian doesn't know you've evolved. It doesn't know that you're no longer the rejected child, the teenager who failed, or the adult who experienced loss. It continues to see the world as a potential threat, a field of scarcity, a repetition of pains it was trained to avoid. Even if, in trying to avoid them, it ends up recreating them. And the most impactful part? It doesn't just observe, it vibrates. The subconscious emits energetic signals, frequencies, emotional impulses that feed directly into the quantum field. In other words, while you believe you're in a neutral state, your reality is still being shaped by the subconscious's automatic records. It's as if the lens through which the universe sees you is filled with old files that were never updated. That's why so many people feel like their conscious intentions don't manifest. They declare new beliefs, try to visualize their desired future, repeat positive affirmations. But meanwhile, their subconscious is still vibrating with fear, attachment, lack, self-sabotage. There's a silent conflict between what is consciously desired and what is subconsciously expressed. And guess which one wins? Always the more consistent one. Always the more active one. And the subconscious, operating 95% of the time, usually holds more power. The subconscious mind is a constant, active observer. It responds to everything. Tone of voice, facial expressions, environments, symbols, the stories you tell yourself. Even a fleeting thought, like a whisper across your mind, can activate powerful, emotionally charged memories within it. And when that happens, your vibration shifts, your state shifts, your frequency shifts, and with that, your reality begins to shift as well. Your life isn't only being created when you're conscious, it's being created right now. And if you're not present, it's the subconscious that takes the wheel. But it's not creating something new, it's repeating the old. It's not visualizing what you want, it's projecting what you fear. It's not listening to your current voice, it's echoing voices from the past. The key point here isn't to demonize the subconscious, but to understand it. It's not your enemy. It's simply a container for everything you allowed in. But if you're not observing, it will keep observing for you, through the lens of fear, repetition, and exaggerated self-protection. Reality is also shaped by what you unknowingly observe. Do you believe you only create your reality when you're focused? When you're meditating, affirming, intending, making clear choices? That's only part of the truth. The other part, perhaps the more powerful one, is this. Your reality is also being shaped in the moments when you're observing without knowing that you're observing. Everything that passes through your perception, even unconsciously, leaves an energetic imprint on your field. A video you watch without thinking, a negative comment you hear and don't question, a random thought that pops into your mind while you're bored in traffic, a conversation happening nearby that you seem to ignore. All of these experiences are being absorbed by your subconscious and integrated as vibrational data. And the quantum field responds to your vibration, not just your verbal intention. It doesn't wait for you to be ready to co-create. It responds to what is active within you. Even what you consider irrelevant or fleeting enters your system and becomes part of what you're sending back to the universe. Imagine your mind as an antenna that never shuts off. You're always absorbing, interpreting, and resonating with what you see, even automatically. The only difference between conscious and unconscious is your awareness of it. But the energy it generates is real, whether you're aware of it or not. That's why a simple moment of distraction, like scrolling through social media without presence, can become a portal of energetic influence. You think you're just passing the time, but your subconscious is absorbing images, emotions, comparisons, judgments, and information that often reinforce patterns of fear, scarcity, or inadequacy. Without realizing it, your field starts to carry those frequencies, and reality begins to reflect them back as experiences that feel like coincidence or bad luck. The same happens when you walk down the street, observing your surroundings on autopilot. Your mind picks up signals, visual, auditory, emotional, and starts building internal stories. Sometimes a stranger's expression activates an old memory. A scent awakens a past emotion. A sound brings back a sense of insecurity. It all happens within seconds, and you barely notice. But the impact is real. Your posture shifts, your breathing changes, your frequency adjusts. Or when suddenly a random thought pops up, something you did years ago, a failure, a cringeworthy moment. You don't know why it surfaced, but it did, and you felt it. And in the feeling, you vibrated, and in vibrating, you transmitted. There is no neutrality when it comes to creating reality. Every observation creates a response. Every focus, even unconscious, feeds the field. It's not about what you think with intensity, it's about what you think with frequency. And frequency doesn't require intention, it only requires repetition. That's why what you consume, what you allow in, what you observe without filter, becomes part of your dominant vibration. This is one of the greatest blind spots of human consciousness, believing we only co-create when we choose. But the truth is, we are always co-creating, even when we're choosing nothing. Because not choosing is still a choice, and that choice leaves room for old patterns to take control. Becoming aware of this is like turning on a light in a room you've always stumbled through in the dark. From the moment you begin to recognize what's being fed by your unconscious attention, you start reclaiming your power. The power to clear, to realign, to say, this isn't mine. And most importantly, the power to choose with presence what you want to observe, absorb, and energetically sustain. How to bring the mind back from automatic limbo. When you realize that much of your reality is being shaped by unconscious patterns, your first reaction might be frustration. How can you change something that seems to happen without your choosing? How do you take control of a mind that constantly slips away, lost in distractions, habits, and memories? The answer doesn't lie in force or resistance, but in presence. Bringing the mind back from the automatic limbo is not a battle, it's a return. A quiet calling that can only be heard when you become the observer of your own mental flow. And that process begins with the simple but powerful act of noticing. Yes, noticing. Recognizing the moments when you step away from yourself. When you're physically present, but internally somewhere else. When you react out of reflex. When thoughts arise and you have no idea why you're thinking them. When a heavy emotion appears, but you don't know where it came from. In those moments, rather than judging or trying to suppress, just observe. Acknowledge the disconnection, name it internally. I'm on autopilot. And that alone is a massive step, because awareness is like light. Once it enters a space, it doesn't have to try to illuminate. It simply does. The same happens when you become aware that you've gotten lost. In that moment, you return to yourself. Once you've noticed, the key is to bring your focus back to now, but not in a forced way, not as if you're trying to escape distraction. The now doesn't require effort. It only asks for presence. Breathe. Feel your body. Listen to the sounds around you. Bring your attention to something happening right in this moment, even if only for a few seconds. This small gesture, however subtle it may seem, is like rebooting the system. You return to the center of your vibration, and from this reclaimed focus, you can reinstall intention. Because it's not just about coming back, it's about deciding what to do with your return. Ask yourself, what do I want to sustain right now? What energy do I want to emit? What frequency do I choose to radiate? You can choose peace. You can choose gratitude. You can choose stillness. And in that stillness, you install presence. This process, as simple as it may seem, is deeply transformative. Because each time you interrupt the automatic cycle, you break a link in the chain that binds your reality to the past. Each time you consciously choose how to feel, you send a new signal to the universe, and the universe responds. It's important to understand that your mind has been trained for years to run, to scatter, to react. It won't become calm overnight, but it can be gently guided. The practice is not to force it to stop, but to gently bring it back every time you notice it has drifted too far. This isn't about policing your thoughts like a guard. It's about cultivating an inner space where you become the center of your own observation, where you can say, without fear or rigidity, I see where I am, and from here I choose what to create. The mind doesn't need to be silenced by force. It needs to be guided with presence. And that presence is born from small moments of awareness that, when added together, change everything. They shift your energetic field, the way you react, your dominant vibration, and over time, they transform your reality. You don't need to dominate the mind. You only need to be present enough to notice when it tries to dominate you. In that moment of recognition, something shifts. You stop being a passenger. You return to being the creator. The spiritual power of the silent observer. There's a space within you where everything can be seen, yet nothing needs to be reacted to. A space of pure awareness, where the mind becomes quiet not by force, but by realization. That's where the true spiritual power of the silent observer is born. We live in a world that conditions us to react constantly, to give opinions, to justify, to judge, to anticipate what comes next. The mind has been trained to fill every empty space with thoughts because silence to it feels uncomfortable. Silence seems ineffective, seems empty. But that's a deep illusion, because silence is not absence. It is full presence. When you choose not to immediately react to what you feel, see, or think, something extraordinary happens. You begin to separate from the mind itself. You're no longer the thought. You're no longer the feeling. You are the one who notices. And that noticer is not conditioned. It doesn't repeat patterns. It doesn't respond out of fear. It simply observes. And in that observation, there is a form of healing that needs no words. The silent observer is the space between stimulus and response. It's the moment you want to react, but instead you breathe. It's when a heavy thought arises and you neither resist nor feed it. You just see it. It's when an emotion visits you, but you don't get swept away by it. You hold it with presence. This space is sacred. It is the field of transformation, because it is there that real choices can be made, not just automatic repetitions. Where there is space, there is freedom. And where there is freedom, there is consciousness. True spirituality isn't about avoiding pain or controlling thoughts. It's about developing this silent quality of observation that doesn't judge, doesn't deny, but also doesn't identify with whatever passes through. This state of silent presence brings clarity, and clarity is power. Because when you can see what's happening within you, without becoming it, you gain the power to choose your response. Anger may arise, but you are not anger. Fear may appear, but you are not fear. And by not identifying with them, you stop those emotions from steering your vibration and shaping your reality without your consent. The silent observer is also the channel through which intuition speaks. The more internal noise, the less room there is for the subtle. But when you slow down inside, you begin to hear something deeper than thought. You begin to feel the guidance of your higher consciousness. not in words, but in perception. And these perceptions are like compasses. They point the way. They reorganize the energy of your life effortlessly. It is in this space of quiet observation that you access the frequency of wisdom. Not the wisdom of books, but the kind that arises from the center of your being. The wisdom that knows when to act and when to be still, when to move forward and when to simply hold presence. The wisdom that understands not everything needs an immediate answer, and that sometimes the true quantum leap comes not from reacting, but from simply being. This silence is not the same as passivity. It is the foundation of conscious action. Because when the mind is noisy, action comes from confusion. But when there is clarity, action becomes simple, direct, precise, and it carries the power of inner truth. The spiritual power of the silent observer is the power to return to your center, to see everything without being pulled by anything. It is the ability to hold presence even in the midst of chaos, and through that, radiate a vibration so strong and stable that the chaos begins to reorganize around you. When you cultivate this silence within, reality begins to reflect that same balance on the outside. Situations untangle, answers arrive. What once seemed like disorder starts to make sense. And all of it happens, not because you fought, but because you observed. Where the mind goes when you take control, when you begin to take command of your mind, something remarkable happens. Little by little, what once felt like a chaotic, unruly territory begins to transform into a finely tuned instrument, a channel in service of your higher consciousness. The mind, which so often seemed like an enemy, loud, uncontrollable, reveals its true nature. It never wanted control. It was simply waiting for direction. Because the mind by itself doesn't create, it executes. It's like a river, turbulent and destructive when left to run wild. But when guided by conscious banks, it brings life, movement, and depth. When you take control, you're not forcing the mind to stop. You're offering it a new path, a clear purpose, an anchor point in the present. In this state, the mind aligns. It calms down, not because it was defeated, but because it was heard. And in that conscious listening, you discover its immense creative power. The mind guided by presence doesn't just organize your thoughts, it elevates your vibration. Because when thoughts are chosen, they become seeds. And conscious seeds grow intentional realities. As you take command, you also notice a natural shift in your emotions. Fear loses strength. Anxiety dissolves. Not because you've repressed those emotions, but because you've stopped feeding the thoughts that kept them alive. And when the emotional field begins to stabilize, your frequency rises, and reality responds to that new frequency. With synchronicities, unexpected encounters, opportunities that once seemed far away. It's as if the universe had been waiting for this alignment between mind, emotion, and presence to deliver what you've always asked for, but weren't energetically available to receive. Because reality doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you vibrate with consistency. Taking control of the mind is, in truth, a reconnection to your creative center. It's turning the mind into a bridge between your higher awareness and the material world, a bridge through which flow ideas, insights, and directions that don't come from the ego, but from your essence. And in that flow, life begins to gain fluidity. You're no longer trapped in cycles of resistance. You enter a state of collaboration with the universe. That's when you begin to notice the synchronicities, those perfect meetings, those words that arrive at just the right time, that sense that time is moving in your favor. None of that is coincidence. They are reflections of a mind aligned with spirit, a mind that no longer chases, but begins to attract. And the most beautiful part is that, over time, this presence becomes natural. You no longer need to try to be attentive. You become attention itself, and from that, your energy expands. Your presence starts to impact the environment. People sense something different about you, even if they can't quite explain it. It's the vibration of the conscious mind, the peaceful mind, the mind that stopped being a battlefield and became a cultivated garden. And it all begins with one gesture: choosing to observe, choosing to notice, choosing to guide. The mind, as part of you, responds to your intention like a lake responds to the breeze, with softness, with reverence, with surrender. The mind doesn't need to be an enemy, but it does need to be guided. And when it is, it reveals what it always was. One of the most powerful tools you have to co-create a reality where your deepest truth can flourish. Taking that command is not about rigid control, it's about inner sovereignty. It's about remembering that you can choose what to think, what to feel, what to vibrate, and that by doing so, you stop being a reflection of the world and start becoming the source of what the world reflects back to you. We've reached the end of our journey, and perhaps now you see with new eyes something that has always been there: the silent power of your observation. You are not a victim of your mind. You've simply been absent in the moments when your presence was most needed. And it's in that absence that old patterns take over, shaping realities that don't reflect who you truly are. But that can change. In every moment, you have the chance to return, to observe, to choose. So here's an invitation. For the next 24 hours, observe everything your mind does when you're not paying attention. Notice the detours. Bring your focus back, lead with intention, and see what happens. Because reality is created in the space between one thought and the next, and in that space, you can wake up.